Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the SWestrans Board, Friday the 28th of March 2025. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the public recording will be made available on the website for public listening following this meeting. Remote participants on Teams, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you are not addressing the meeting. Writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute, although I will look out for the virtual hand. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. Please speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. So we'll move on to agenda item 1, which is written apologies. So Claire, can you confirm who's present today and any apologies? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. We have 5 board members present, yourself in the hall here in Dumfries, 4 board members present on Teams, being councillors Dempster, Scobie, Walters and Wood. Not present currently is Stephanie Mottram and Karen Jackson. I understand Karen Jackson could be along later. Councillor Scobie has his hand up.
Councillor Scobie, Willie?
Yeah, it's not so much an apology, or maybe it is, Chair, but I may have to take my leave off you at 11:30, just to let you know about that, Chair.
Thank you. Move on to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. Do board members have any declarations they wish to make? I don't see any hands going up or anything in the chat. So we'll move on to agenda item 3, which is the minute of the meeting on the 31st of January 2025. This is for approval. Can we approve the minutes? I'll take silence as acceptance. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to the first report on the agenda, which is the update on the Convention of the South of Scotland on the 10th of March 2025. We've got Councillor Jenny Linehan. I think I've pronounced your name right. You could probably put me right. I see you online. Portfolio holder of the Environment and Transport at Scottish Borders Council and chair of the Strategic Action Group for Transport for the Convention of the South of Scotland, has kindly joined us via Teams to represent this item. So Jenny, over to you. Would you like to give a brief introduction to the item? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, many brownie points for pronouncing Linehan correctly. There are numerous interesting variations of how my name comes out. Thank you for asking me to join you today. Your agenda is extremely thorough. When I was going through the papers last night, it's very detailed. I'm happy just to give a summary of what was said, if that would be of assistance, or just carry. Okay, I'll give a brief summary. The meeting took place on the 10th of March in Dumfries, which you know. The convention discussion on transport focused on 4 main discussion points: data, funding, alignment of the local bus network, rail, and the workforce. Each topic was introduced by officers from Scottish Borders Council, Dumfries and Galloway Council, and SOSI, and the convention discussion opened with a short number of starter questions. I felt that the level of debate was very constructive and resulted in a number of actions being agreed for each topic, with the Cabinet Secretary being heavily involved in the various conversations. Examples of the actions that were discussed and agreed in draft were as follows. It was agreed that data should be used more readily and partners should be willing to share this data more widely to allow more robust business case analysis to be assembled for transport-related projects. Also, it was agreed that a commitment to ongoing data provision to inform policy development and decision-making and the sharing of best practice across Scotland should be encouraged. Within the local bus network discussion, it was agreed that the councils and SOSI would work with Transport Scotland to help support rural bus services by finding innovative ways to make use of existing funding provision. It was also agreed that a business case for the expansion of bus networks across the region using data as an enabler should be undertaken. At the rail discussion, it was agreed that ScotRail would work with both local authorities to promote more joint ticketing and enhanced connectivity between rail and bus. It was also agreed that the South needs to collectively agree transport priorities, recognising the significant cost and timescales for rail infrastructure projects, and the importance of making a robust business case for rail improvement based on appropriate data that is aligned with bus service provision and connectivity. Transport Scotland also agreed to make representations to the UK government regarding maximising the existing service provision at Reston Station and continuing the joint commitment with the Department of Transport to this Borders Rail Extension business case and feasibility work. I'm pleased to advise you that Scottish Borders Council has just appointed a senior project manager to lead the Borders Railway Extension business case work. For the workforce discussion, it was agreed that partners would work with Skills Development Scotland and existing bus operators to promote careers in the bus industry. It was also agreed that partners would explore the development of a marketing plan to make more careers in transport look more appealing. And that's the end of my summary. I hope I haven't bamboozled you with too much.
Thanks very much, Jenny, for that. Before I open it up to members' questions or comments, we do have Lead Officer Simon Bradbury, and we've got the Vice Chair, Karen, who's from SOSI as well. So I'll open it up to any board members first of all, and then I'll open it up to observers. So any board members got any questions or comments on the report? Councillor Wood. Is it Councillor Scobie? Sorry, beg your pardon. Councillor Scobie. Thanks,
Chair. It's really just to ask Jenny, you know, it's a good report, and it's good to hear first hand from Jenny just what was discussed and how it was discussed. I'll just ask Jenny and maybe yourself, Chair, can any of the convention partners put forward issues that we would feel is worthy of debate with the convention?
Thanks, Councillor Scobie. Jenny?
Do you know, I'm not entirely sure, and I think you raise an interesting question. I personally don't see why not, because everything related to transport is important towards the convention. But if all of us asked questions, every single thing, it would be overrun with issues. So I think it might depend on the agenda. If you had something in particular that was important, you would need to pass on to your councillor who was involved.
Thanks. I think Karen Jackson from SOSI, who's also the Vice Chair of SWestrans, wishes to come in.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Linehan answered the question. So the convention obviously brings together various public sector bodies. The council is part of it, and John, you were obviously there at the transport discussion. And the group that Jenny chairs, the Strategic Action Group on Transport, is feeding issues through. So I think, Councillor Scobie, there's a way of feeding those issues through to the convention through the members that are already there. But Councillor Linehan has said that more succinctly than me, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
If I could come back, Chair, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Yeah, sure, Willie.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question, because one of the things that the council has as one of its objectives is the lobbying group for the A77 and A75, which is a big issue in terms of transport for Dumfries and Galloway. And I just wondered what the procedure was to get that onto the agenda for the convention to consider, because it's one that we feel we are ignored by the Scottish Government in terms of our fair share of capital investment in both these roads.
Yeah,
but,
thanks.
You know, it's just to find the procedure and getting stuff onto the agenda.
Yeah.
Chair,
Sure,
if I
Jenny,
may,
just come
Chair,
in.
I can confirm, Councillor Scobie, that actually that was raised at a rep meeting recently. So please do not feel that Dumfries and Galloway has been neglected in any way, because that is not the case. I appreciate that there are political reasons why things happen at certain times, but I can assure you that everything is on the table.
Good.
Is that okay, Willie?
Well, it's just to see, that it gets, if it's possible, to get that onto the agenda. And I see it meets every 6 months, just to get it as an item of business, which is part of the work of Dumfries and Galloway Council through its lobbying group. Good to get it on the agenda if that is possible for the convention to consider.
Thanks, Willie. I'll bring Simon in.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to raise the point. Well, firstly, certainly welcome any contributions in terms of future points that we could bring up. I suppose in terms of those 4 that were selected for the session on the 10th of March, there were deliberately ones that were firstly shared across the south of Scotland, but also ones which were kind of felt particularly acutely, and which were issues which we wanted to raise, which were more kind of systemic issues as opposed to individual projects. But I suppose on the A75, A77 point, I could also reassure you, Councillor Scobie, that Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop, who was down for the session, took the opportunity for a meeting with senior council officers in terms of the A75 and A77, which happened immediately before the cost session that afternoon. So I wasn't in that meeting or wasn't closely involved with it, but I do know that opportunity was taken to engage with the Cabinet Secretary on that day about that particular issue.
Thanks, Simon. Any other board members? Don't see any hands going up. Any of the observers? No questions from observers. So thanks very much, Jenny, for taking us through that brief, and we'll just go to recommendations, which members of the board are asked to note the discussion at the cost session and the draft outcomes identified. So thanks very much for that. We'll now move on to agenda item 5, which is the External Audit Plan 2024-25. We've got Janet Sutton here as to assist with any questions. Janet, do you have anything to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair. Peter Lindsay from Audit Scotland will give a brief introduction to the plan.
Thank you. I did see Peter pop up on the screen, so welcome, Peter. Do you want to take us through a brief report?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning all. Yes, just briefly, Chair, I was just going to talk through the annual audit plan, the content. So this is obviously our annual audit plan for the financial year 24-25, which is the 3rd year of our audit appointment, 5-year audit appointment. And pages 56 and 57 of the agenda numbers of our plan set out the scope of the audit, our responsibilities as auditors, and also the responsibilities of SWestrans. In terms of the audit of the annual accounts for 2024-25, materiality levels that we apply, they're shown in Exhibit 1 on pages 58 and 59. And Exhibit 2 on page 60, it highlights one significant risk of material misstatement to the financial statements. And this is a standard risk in all of our audit plans. And this shows the planned audit work in response to this risk that we carry out during the audit of the annual accounts. Exhibit 3 on page 65 sets out the audit timetable for 24-25, which we've agreed with Janet. And paragraph 32, lastly, shows the audit fee for 24-25, which is a 1.9% increase from last year's fee. So happy to take any questions from members on the content of our annual audit plan.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'll open it up to board members for questions. Councillor Walters, Keith.
Thanks very much for that, Peter. I just missed the bit where you said that there was a financial risk to be audited that was a standard financial risk, and that somebody applied to. Sorry, which page was that on? Was that? Did you say page 61 or?
It's page, sorry, where are we? It's on page 60.
All right.
This is a standard risk because there is no sort of way that management can address that risk. So this is standard in all of our annual audit plans. So therefore, we've got to highlight it and carry out those tests that are listed in Exhibit 2, Councillor Walters, to address that risk.
Right. That's fine. So there's no cause to be alarmed as to being
No.
why that has actually been
No.
brought forward. Yeah.
No, this risk appears in our annual audit plan for Dumfries and Galloway Council, the pension fund audit as well, audits across Audit Scotland.
That's great. Thank you very much for that.
Problem.
Thank you. Any other board members? Don't see anyone coming in, so I'll open it up to observers. No questions from observers. Okay, we'll just move to the recommendations, which is members of the board are asked to note and comment on the external audit plan for 2024-25 in the appendix. Be happy to do that. I think we did comment on it. Thank you. We'll just move on to agenda item 6, which is the draft revenue expenditure budget of 2025-2026. Janet, do you have anything to add to that report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair.
Thank you. I'll open it up to board members. Comments, questions? Silence. Okay, I'll open it up to observers. Silence. Okay, we'll just move on to the recommendations. Members of the board are asked to agree the draft revenue budget for 2025-26 as set out in Table 1. Happy to do so. Yes. Now move on to agenda item 7, which is the active travel funding. We've got Peter here to assist with any questions. Peter, do you have anything to add?
Nothing more to add, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. I'll open it up to board members. Questions, comments? Councillor Walters. Keith. You took your hand down, Keith. Were you wanting to come in, or was that just...
Oh, sorry, I clicked the wrong button there.
Okay.
I managed to mute myself. Sorry then. No, it was page 73, 3.5 at the bottom. It's just and over to 74. It says SWestrans has received over £2 million worth of requests. And that's for, as far as I can tell, that's for a budget that we're going to end up with about 989,000. Yeah, I just wondered if that had actually increased the amount of requests we were getting from local organisations, or whether that's what we were expecting. Because obviously, and as it says in the report, presumably officers are having to go through some sort of process to try and decide which of those £2 million worth is going to get funding from the 989,000. If Peter wants to answer that, or somebody else, or whatever.
Yeah, I think we did get a slight increase in the active travel funding, but Peter?
Yes, thanks, Chair. In terms of the overall applications, that was very much the first sift of what had come in. Some of those are not actually valid applications as such. We are in discussion with the council in terms of their local authority direct award as to allocating some of that funding to some of the projects, so that actually takes away some of the cost implications to that. Also in a lot of discussion with some of these expressions of interest have been quite raw ideas, and the exact way we deliver them may change. Discussing individual requests, we very much look to get things that the community wanted in there, as well as just beautifully crafted applications from national organisations. So I think there is pretty much the scope to actually deliver the general overall ask of those funds, but maybe not in the way they've been asked.
Has that been helpful, Keith?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Peter.
Thank you. Any other board members? Councillor Scobie.
Thanks, Chair. It was really just to ask Peter, is this the fund that we would be drawn on for what was put forward as a pathway from Stranraer to Laswalt? And also, whether this is again a fund that would be used for the cycle lanes on the 75 and the 77, particularly between Stranraer again and Cairnryan, just to link up the pathways there on the 77 between Stranraer and Cairnryan. I just wondered if this is money that the active travel that would be used for those projects.
Peter.
Chair, this specific funding is not for that project. Transport Scotland themselves fund Amy, and they are looking at the Cairnryan link at the moment. I will need to get an update on where we are with that. I think they were doing some exploratory work last year, but I'm just waiting on feedback from them on that.
Yeah, sorry, Willie.
The Laswalt one is this one that we are intending using active travel funded, the path between Stranraer and Laswalt. Thanks for that, Peter. In terms of the active the cycle lanes, or if you could get us an update on that one, and really just an answer on the Laswalt.
Thanks, Willie. Just before I bring Peter in, I believe the funding we get is people, place and behaviour change funding from the Scottish Government. Different funding stream, I think, for the coastal path that you were talking about. But Peter?
Chair, that is correct. The people and places for behaviour change work as opposed to infrastructure. There is council tier 1 funding that we are looking at with the Laswalt. Grant, do you have any further information on that?
Grant.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Peter. Yeah, I can confirm that we're looking to use Tier 1 council funding for this financial year for the Laswalt to look at doing planning stages 3 to 4, REBA, for the Laswalt to Stranraer.
Has that been helpful, Willie?
It has. Thanks, Chair, and to the officers.
Okay, any other board members? Don't see anyone wanting to come in, open up to observers? Nope. Well, in that case, we'll just move to recommendations. And members of the board are asked to, one, note, excuse me, the strong demand for behaviour change funding from the local community and the collaborative work being done across Dumfries and Galloway Council. And 2 is to note the current work undertaken to allocate the funding to appropriate projects. We're happy to note both 1 and 2. Okay. We'll now move on to agenda item 8, which is the Observer's Update. This is your report, Claire. Have you anything to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll open it up to board members. Comments, questions? Karen, Vice Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question, I think. Is there anything we can be doing to encourage people to be observers of SWestrans? I think they bring an amazing insight into different issues and different perspectives. So great if we could be more to encouraging people. So I wonder, as part of the work that's going on, we can think about that.
Claire.
Yeah, well, certainly would welcome suggestions from the board about who are individuals or organisations that should be approached to be observers. The board can consider observers at any time. This is just a timely report as the review was due for those that were appointed for 4 years.
Yeah, Karen.
So I wonder, obviously there's a discussion later on the agenda on the business plan and the regional transport strategy. I wonder, as we're sharing more about that, whether there's an opportunity to make that more accessible to people so that they feel more interested in getting involved in what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That seems appropriate. Willie, Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to clear through yourself, Chair, is it a matter of putting forward name or names, and then it's for the officials to approach the individuals? What's the procedure for that, Chair, in putting forward names?
Thank you. If anybody's got anybody they'd like me to approach, you can provide that information to myself, and then I would contact them and ask them to provide information under the point 60.4 of the report. So that would then come forward for a board decision. Thank you.
Okay, Willie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Claire.
Thank you. Don't see any other board members, observers. It's been part of the observer group.
I know, it just
Laura.
was slightly odd. Just to ask, is it okay to put forward groups where we think it might be good to get a representative to come forward?
Yeah, the way the legislation is written, we need to have named individuals because it's the individuals that are appointed rather than the organisation as such, but you can certainly have individuals on behalf of an organisation or more than one person named on behalf. It's just the way the legislation is. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Simon?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in briefly on this point to raise that in conversations that I've been having with the Regional Youth Council recently, I've mentioned the opportunity to them to be observers to the board, and I've had a swathe of interest, I'm pleased to say. Following that, I think 2 or possibly 3 people have got in touch to say they'd be very keen to be observers to the board. So I've got back to them with a holding response to say that there's a discussion on the board agenda this morning and that we'll be in touch in due course. So the board will be able to consider the appropriateness of the Youth Council being members as observers in the future.
Yeah, we have had members of the Youth Council in the past, so yeah. Any other points, questions, comments? No. We'll move to the recommendations. Members of the board are asked to note that an update of the observers is being undertaken by the Secretary and will report to the board in June. Happy to note that. Yep. Thank you. Now move on to agenda item 9. This is the SWestrans Business Plan 2025-26. Grant, this is your report, and you're here to assist. Have you anything to add to the report?
Thanks, Chair. It's more just it's been a wee while since we brought a business plan to the board. So this is a draft. It's a start of something, and we're keen to receive input from the board to help develop it. It's a work in progress to take things forward. And while it does have a number of work streams that our team is working on, we also intend to bring forward a delivery plan for the regional transport strategy that we are also, our team are also providing further work streams along with a number of our partners also. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Grant. Opening up to board members. Councillor Dempster. Jim.
Morning, Chair. Morning, folks. Just a couple of questions. On page 87 of the report, it talks about projects prioritise mobility hubs across the region. And on the project action, it talks about working with the council levelling up team. Now, I don't know where this is, but I understood that the council had a team on the Levelling Up Fund that were doing or establishing transport hubs. And I'm sure that Annan, Stranraer and Sanquhar, certainly Annan and Stranraer were, Annan and Sanquhar were 2 of them. where do we tie this particular aspiration or a project in with the mobility hubs that are already there? And should we know be if there's a transport element to it, should we be reporting it anyway? Because clearly if the council is delivering a transport hubs, the mobility hubs should be tied into that. And it seems that this has been done in isolation, unless the other projects have somehow fallen off the table, for want of a better word. And the only other question was on page 88, active travel, which is, I think, very much a priority of ours. We are saying that we will consult, develop, plan and fund various infrastructure projects. Do we have any indication of what that funding level is? Who has already applied, what the application process is? And I know this might be a high-level document, but give us some information on how we develop that scheme further. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Jim. Grant?
Thanks, Chair, through yourself. On the Levelling Up Fund transport bid, which involves mobility hubs, it's a council project, and our team are going to make ourselves available to help and assist them on that delivery of that project. We're, to the best of my knowledge, we're still waiting for our memorandum of understanding from the UK government regarding receiving that funding, and there's hope to receive some news very soon. But all those elements that are involved in that transport bid Levelling Up Fund are all transport related, and they're all covered by the regional transport strategy. And there's certainly some skill sets and expertise that we have in our team that we can help the council with the help of that delivery of those mobility hubs. So it's not separate mobility hubs, it's actually us trying to work closely with the council to help deliver what are basically our regional transport strategy priorities. There's going to be a short time scale, I understand, if we do confirm getting that the council receives that funding. So it'll be all hands on deck, and we're here to help and support as much as we can. Regarding active travel funding, we receive capital expenditure from the board every year. It's that we receive 50% of all capital expenditure goes towards active travel, and it's 400,000 for this year that we're going to be receiving. The council have provisionally offered us 350,000 from Tier 1 funding that they received directly as part of the Verity agreement. And we've also been putting a number of bids for Tier 2 funding for planning and design work, which could be anything between 450 to 600,000 pounds that we hope to receive through Transport Scotland. We've not heard any word through that regarding that Tier 2 funding so far. And we were also managed to get some £420,000 worth of Tier 2 funding just for between December to March this year, and don't want to confuse matters, for the KPTD development to help get Phase B over the line. So, and when we're carrying on throughout the year to try and see how much external funding we can have. We have quite an ambitious capital expenditure programme which we try and bring to the board every board meeting, and we've had a bit of slippage from last year, but we still have a number of projects there in place to try and deliver. So we're doing everything we can to try and get as much funding, and we recognise it as a priority. A number of local place plans, we will also work with the place plan teams, whereby public transport and active travel are up in the top 5 priorities for these settlements, and that's including alongside health. So we're looking to try and work with a number of those local place plans teams to try and see how we can try and accommodate some of the investment wish list, some of the investment priorities for those communities, and try and take things forward for the coming this year and the following years.
Thanks, Grant. Has that been helpful, Jim?
Yes, Chair, been particularly helpful. Thank you, and thanks, Grant.
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Scobie. Willie.
Thanks, Chair. I'm looking at page 82 and the layout of the different strategic objectives. Maybe hang the first issue on 1 and 2 here, to facilitate and encourage safe, active travel for all by connecting communities and travel hubs, and to improve the quality and sustainability of the public transport. Just a couple of issues there, and I've raised one on numerous occasions that you're well aware of, Chair, and that's the long distance travel, the quality of buses that are used, the particular journey, having convenience stops and so forth. It's how do we improve that under our strategic objectives 1 and 2. And the other one was, and I was approached by the MP, John Cooper, with a constituency in Whithorn. I don't know if this is the agenda item, I should put this one, but he had been approached by a constituency in Whithorn where they were saying there were no bus shelters in Whithorn. I just wondered if that falls under objective 1 and 2, to have a look at Whithorn to see if on where the bus stops are located and if they are in the right place. And there may be none, was the impression I was getting. And Jim had already asked the question in terms of the transport hubs. And I know there was one earmarked for Stranraer, where I think, Grant, there was over £1 million allocated to it. Just wondered where that is in the grand scale of things in terms of the objectives.
Thanks,
Chair.
Thanks, Willie. Grant?
Thanks, Chair. I believe certainly the answer to the first question, we're in the middle of going through a tender process in which a number of the concerns that Councillor Scobie has raised have been taken into consideration regarding through that process. Again, the mobility hub at Stranraer, which is along with the rest of the Levelling Up Fund transport bid, it's just waiting to hear for the memorandum of understanding to be signed. Again, I'll refer him to Sarah Jane Alsop, who's the project manager on behalf of the council, who's the project lead, and she'll be able to give him a few more details regarding the budget that they've allocated towards that hub. And the bus stop, Whithorn, we've been involved in that over a year or so, and it's been left with the economic development team who are dealing with the local place plan regarding that bus stop. There's a difference of opinions on where that bus stop should be located, and it was left with the local place plan team to come back to us at a later date when it's been decided where they would like that bus stop. So we're keen to get a bus stop. It's just a matter of what location that the community wants. So we're just waiting for that. We're waiting to hear back from them regarding that.
Has that been helpful, Willie?
Yeah, I wonder if Grant could follow that up with an email to me so that I can advise the MP as to the situation with the bus stops in Whithorn. That would be helpful to advise the John Cooper on that one. I don't know, Grant, if you Chair, through you again, in terms of the quality of buses and toilets on buses on these long distance routes, if we can advance that any further.
Yeah, I'm a kind of similar mind to yourself when it comes to long distance travelling, for especially comfort breaks or toilets and buses. I don't know where we are at the moment. It's not in the report at the moment, but we did I'm sure, mentioned this at a previous board meeting, that we would like to see a report. I don't know if that's something that we could put on the cards. I'm looking at my lead officer here at the moment on that particular subject.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm certainly happy to update. And indeed, as you're aware, we have a conversation later in the agenda with respect to the procurement process for the bus network, in which issues such as this are closely tied up. In relation to the Route 500, I can certainly confirm that Councillor Scobie's feedback has very much been taken into account in terms of that route and the necessity for conveniences on the service, but potentially also a comfort break on that route. And so in terms of the procurement process that we plan to follow, we have incorporated that. So we have options available to us in terms of different prices and understanding of what the implications of including requirements such as that in the service would be in terms of additional cost. And then it will be for us officers and indeed recommendations of the board in terms of decisions that we'd then wish to take in relation to those issues.
Thank you. Has that been helpful, Willie?
Yeah, and if we could be kept up to speed with that one, particularly the long distance routes and the quality of buses being used here, we kept advised as how that's being developed.
Thanks, Willie. Vice Chair Karen?
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I suspect mine are more general comments on the plan rather than specific actions. So it's great to see, and it's great to see the ambition captured in the business plan, but I guess it's that perennial question about resources to deliver. So recognise that you've got kind of the caveat at the top about it depends on the team's capacity, but let's not set ourselves up to fail. So just interested to understand or to get some reassurance that we're confident that we can deliver what's captured in the plan. Grant, you mentioned the interaction with the RTS delivery, so again, good to see that and how that's woven through. The tables on pages 89 and 90 highlight really significant areas of grant and the spend of SWestrans. Again, it would be just interesting to understand a little bit more about how those link into the actions. I know you'll know, but as a read, it's difficult to draw that out. And I guess that links into, does this really reflect the areas of action that the team's involved in? So your day-to-day activity, is this kind of being drawn into this in terms of where you actually spend the majority of your day? I think really important to capture that in a business plan so we don't list lots of other tasks when actually what you're doing day in, day out is something slightly different to what's captured to the business plan. And just linking back to I think the conversation about observers, this is a really good opportunity to highlight what the RTP is about and just really share for people in a way that actually makes some sense, recognising how important transport is. And this is one of the really good tools that we could be using for that. More comments than questions, I suspect. Thanks, Chair.
Got anything to add, Grant?
Nothing more to add, but just very grateful for those comments, and we take them on board going forward, absolutely. And we are aware of the capacity side of things, and yeah, we're trying to be, we're trying to use as much partnership working as possible and working with other partners to help deliver a number of these different projects. We'll fund them, but yeah, so it's just, we're just trying to box clever a wee bit. But yeah, no, absolutely, fully take on.
Thanks, Grant. I mean, we are asked to provide any comments and contents on the proposed business plan because it is a draft one.
I've got my hand up, John.
I see that, Jim. I'll let you in a minute. I'm not going to recommendations, by the way. I'm just making a comment.
Sorry, I thought you were.
No. We are being asked to consider the draft report, and obviously the officers will take on board any comments that have been made from board members and others. So, Simon, did you want to come in?
I did, yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank the Vice Chair for her comments. I think they're really, really helpful. Just to perhaps take them in reverse order, I think ensuring that we reflect sort of business as usual activity in terms of what actually takes up the team's time, I think, is a really good point. I suppose in terms of the business plan, we've tried to focus it on kind of betterment or improvement projects, but inevitably that's not always necessarily what takes up a lot of the time of the team. So I think that's a helpful challenge. In terms of the level of grants and the finance section at the end, just simply because of the timing of this board meeting, it's been quite difficult, obviously working closely with Janet and other colleagues in finance, in terms of really pinning down and finalising those budget figures. So they were kind of slotted in fairly late in the day, but I do think there's the opportunity for us to sort of improve on and use this business plan as a kind of organic document, so I think we can reflect individual costs back into those line items above. And I suppose just on your first point about level of ambition, some of these deliverables in the section don't have specifics and so are kind of scalable in a way, although obviously when we bring future items to the board, they will be more specific in terms of the level of delivery and the degree to which we can deliver against those line items in each of those tables with the budget that we've got available.
That been helpful, Karen? Yeah. Okay, Jim?
Thanks, John. Thanks, Sharon. I'm sorry I interrupted. I thought you were going to go to the recommendation. Just again on page 88, the first section, improve the local bus network, and I'm absolutely in line with what Councillor Scobie is saying, and the express buses should have toilets on board. But my point is, the local bus network is poorly served, especially the commercial routes, mainly by Stagecoach. The quality of their vehicles and the reliability is less than helpful. And I think we should be pressing all providers of local bus network services, whether they're contracted or whether they're a private and commercial arrangement. They should have decent quality buses on their route. I've travelled in buses where you couldn't see the window and they shake like a box of nails or rattle like a box of nails, and it's no attractive to bus users. As an aside, there's a lovely bus on the 221 route, fantastic. I saw it this morning. It looks great, but that's what we should have for every route. Good quality buses so that passengers enjoy their journey, no have to go on a bus because they have no alternative to do so, despite the fact that it's a less than acceptable way or means of travel. So it's in our business plan, and I trust that we will try and encourage providers to provide decent buses to encourage more folk to use that particular method of service. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I don't think anyone would argue in that comment. Right, so if there's no other board members, I'll open it up to observers. Laura?
Yeah, just a couple of points. The first one, I'm wondering if there's any scope in this, it could come under a few headings, to look at getting bikes on buses as well as parts at mobility hubs at bus stops. It's something that comes again and again, people wanting to take a bus and have a bike ride to the bus and a bike ride at the end, finding useful ways to transport bikes on buses. And the second one was, how robust is the business plan in terms of changes of circumstances? I'm thinking particularly of the Kakubri Bridge issue at the moment, which has had quite a big impact on school buses and service buses in the area, which potentially, depending on how long it goes on, might have quite a big impact on business planning.
Thanks, Laura. Grant?
Thanks, Chair, and through yourself. Thanks, Laura, for the questions. First of all, bikes on buses and bikes on trains are both priorities that we're trying to be keen to work with partners on, including the operators and also the rail operators. We are also keen involved to get and to improve accessibility to railway stations as well as hubs for individuals, whether it be walking, wheeling or cycling. So it's not just that we get making sure we've got access to get them onto the bus. It's getting bikes on the bus. It's also getting access to the bus or to railway stations, stroke ferry ports. So it is definitely an area where we are in talks with operators on. regarding your second question, I was going to see if Linda might be able to come in with the second question regarding sorry,
what was your second question, Laura?
Sorry, Cuckoobury Bridge. Cuckoobury Bridge, sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Linda?
Thank you, Grant. Yes, we're currently, we've got an amended timetable for the 431 that's been affected by the Cuckoobury Bridge closure. Unfortunately, I can't give you an update just now on the DGC buses side. We're waiting on an update today. They're currently looking at all options, shuttles, you know, getting a wee shuttle service on, using the community transport. But by the close of play today, we'll have a notice on the council website advising what's being affected and what alternatives are in place for the duration, because obviously we don't know how long this is going to last neither. So we are on the case.
Thank you. Has that been helpful, Laura?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. There's some very helpful comments. I don't see anyone else wanted to come in, so we'll just go to the recommendations, which is 1, to review and provide any comments on the content of the proposed business plan 2025-26, and 2, approve that the lead officer to amend the draft considering any comments and finalise for publication and circulation. We're happy to do that. Yep, nods in the room. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 10, which is the SWestrans Annual Report 2023-24. Kirsty is here to assist. Kirsty, have you anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair, but happy to take any comments or questions on the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. I'll open it up to board members first of all. Comments, questions? Nope. I'll open it up to, Jim. Okay.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a couple of things. I've just been quietly drifting through the report here, and A75 and A77 highlight as a critical need, and I think that's right. But we haven't, I hope, lost sight of the A76, because I see the A709 corridor to Lockerbie has been featured in the report as well. And the A76 is vital for work and transport of goods, and we've never had an A76 that's clear with traffic lights for years and years. We have one permanent on a bridge between Kirkconnell and Sank, and we've got a lot of work going on that's intermittent constantly.
Jim,
so can we have a report
Jim,
at some stage?
Sorry,
yeah.
Jim. Sorry to cut in there. What page are you on?
I'm on page, can find it, 119.
Thank you.
Page 119. So it's about the lack of any reference to the A76, basically. We have the A709 corridor update, we have the A77, A75, which is hugely important, and I get that. And it's not in the report, doesn't mean to say we're not doing anything, but I want to see that included in some kind of engagement with Transport Scotland to see if we can get improvements in that road. And the only other question I have is on page 123. The very last one, Glasgow South West service frequency journey times. It says lag gaps within the Fries and Galloway timetable now addressed. I thought they'd recently cut services again, and I understood there's no longer a late train going north, so we try to sustain the nighttime economy in Dumfries, but we'll not do that if we can't get passengers either out or back in. So I wonder if this is actually up to date. I know it's the 2009 to 2023 transport strategy is already out of date, but are we keeping pace with what's happening so that we can report to board members on that, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Kirsty?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Dempster, for your comments and questions there. What I would like to highlight is the way that the annual report is reported on. It seems to be sort of almost 2 years in arrears, so the information contained within this report is based on the delivery plan of the previous regional transport strategy. What we have committed to do that's highlighted in the report is to bring the annual report for the last year, so 24-25, which will be based on the new regional transport strategy from 2024. So I think that's probably why there's a bit of outdated information within that. But the way that the reporting has been set up previously is that we have been reporting sort of 2 years almost in arrears, but we're looking to correct that at the June board meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Chair, Kirsty, thanks very much for that.
Yeah, I did say that 2009 to 2023 is 2 years behind, as Kirsty was saying. So, Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, just to build on what Jim was just saying there about the A76, and I'm looking at page 107 and 108. Particularly 108, but just taking in what Jim was saying about the A76, and it's worth to note, and we have never been challenged wearing a different hat as a campaign team for the 77. Of the 3 routes, the 75, 76 and 77, of the £10 billion of capital investment on transport, on roads over the last 10 years, Dumfries and Galloway on the 3, 75, 76, 77 has received 0.04% of that £10 billion. In my opinion, and a family held view, we have been ignored and neglected in terms of those 3 major trunk roads for decades. And really the STPR2 that we identify in page 108 in terms of the recommendation 40, it's going to come nowhere near what is needed on the 77 and the 75, and Jim has made the case for the 76 in terms of improving the road. It'll straighten on the 77 a couple of corners and give a couple of passing places, but nothing near to what's needed. And if you take Cairnline, it must be the only ferry port in the whole of the UK that is not served by either a dual carriageway or a motorway. And we've really got to push this. It's good to see it's on the annual report, but for SWestrans, in my opinion, we've got to be pushing a lot harder to get the proper, fair and equitable investment programme into Dumfries and Galloway for the 3 trunk roads. There was reference made to the first report we had today of the course meeting with the Transport Minister. I did likewise last Friday. And we keep pressing the case for much more investment, and I would hope that SWestrans would join in that lobbying activity. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Willie. I don't see any reason why, as an RTP, we shouldn't be lobbying. I think we should, based on our regional transport, or strategic transport programme that we had. So, yeah, I'm open to suggestions how we can lobby and how far we should lobby. I don't know if that's something that maybe the lead officer can assist with. I'm looking at you, Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to come in. It kind of echoes Kirsty's point in that this document itself relates to a previous regional transport strategy and an annual report for that. But I certainly take your point, Councillor Scobie, in terms of the importance of this issue. I'd reflect back the strategic objective in our current regional transport strategy, strategic objective 5, to provide improved, reliable, resilient and safe road-based connectivity for the movement of people and goods. So this is clearly a key issue under that. In terms of the work around the A75, A77 lobbying activity, I have just been involved, in fact, earlier this week in terms of reviewing and commenting on activity in relation to that lobbying. But I certainly take your point that I think SWestrans should try and involve itself and certainly contribute as much as it possibly can in future in terms of that issue, because obviously it's a key one in terms of the future regional transport strategy and the deliverables contained within it. So yes, very happy to follow up on that and to be involved further.
Thank you, Simon. Has that been helpful, Willie?
Yeah, I'm pleased to hear that, and I'm more than happy to work alongside Simon. I think we should be, as SWestrans, trying to make or to make a track to the Transport Minister to make the case. The more that we get lobbying, perhaps we could get better results in terms of our fair share of the investment programme on the trunk roads. So thanks for that, Simon.
Thanks, Willie. Karen?
Thanks, Chair. Again, it's probably a general question about the report. The audience, and I take the point, it's 2 years out, reporting on information for 2 years ago, but it links to the discussion that's just taken place. Do we know, so the audience for this is Transport Scotland, do we know what they do with it, and have we ever had any feedback on these? So I know obviously an annual report, we have to do it every year, it takes a lot of resource. Is it because we have to do it under the legislation, and is it a kind of something that Transport Scotland engages with? If it's something that Transport Scotland engages with, as the conversation says, we need to be highlighting our current priorities rather than looking 2 years back. But I get the Act requires us to do this. So just a little bit on, have you ever had anything back from Transport Scotland on our annual reports? And how do we make sure that they're not looking 2 years back and actually engaging with us on the issues that matter now? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Karen, for your question there. I have to be honest and say we don't receive any formal feedback on the annual report, certainly in my experience of submitting the annual report. But presumably it will structure sort of any conversation that they have with SWestrans in terms of it's a sort of key lead to what our key priorities are, and that any conversation that we would have with them around that would probably be based on the information that's in there. So it's not ideal that it's so out of date, but we're going to bring it back in line from the June board, and then they would have an overview of what we've achieved within the previous financial year, but also with a sort of look ahead as to where we're going in the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Dempster. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Probably can just, we have just come to a sort of general agreement that something needs to be done. And I know Willie's very active in the A7, A7, A75 campaign group. Maybe it's time we invited someone from Transport Scotland in to meet us as a board to outline what their proposals are for the A77, the A75 specifically, but always expect them to address the A709, the A76, and see what we can do to take that matter forward. And it might come in the way of a report to next month's or the next board meeting, setting out how we might approach Transport Scotland and how we might engage with others to try and bring about improvement. Because if we just sit quietly, that's exactly what will happen. And I don't think that's what we should do. We should be proactively trying to improve the connectivity, which in itself will improve the whole region. And I don't need to tell you that, Chairman, nor Simon or any other folk present here. We're all signed up for the same purpose. So thanks for that, Chairman.
Thanks, Jim, for your comments. Is that something that we can do maybe for a future board meeting to try and get somebody from Transport Scotland?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Dempsey. Absolutely, certainly happy to approach Transport Scotland. In fact, I've had the conversation with Fiona Brown, who's the interim director of Transport Strategy at Transport Scotland just earlier this year, and had that conversation about the extent and the degree to which Transport Scotland engage with the RTPs, us included. Fiona made the point there were 32 local authorities across Scotland and 7 regional transport partnerships, and she's got a relatively small team, and so the ways in which she's tried to engage with the RTPs previously is through the RTP Chairs meeting, which Transport Scotland have attended, and also lead officers meeting. But that's not to say that we can't ask, and I'd certainly agree that we'd welcome their attendance at a future board meeting. So I'm happy to take that forward.
That sounds like good news. I think most of the board are up for that. So if there's no more questions from board members, observers? Nothing from observers? Okay, we'll just move to the recommendations, which members of the board are asked to, 1, agree the SWestrans annual report for 2023-24 attached as the appendix for submission to the Scottish Ministers, and 2, provide comments on what information they would like included in the annual report for 24-25, and also for a future date, try and get somebody from Transport Scotland to attend a future board meeting. Are we content with that? Take silence as acceptance. Thank you very much. Now move on to agenda item 11, which is the equalities reporting. Kirsty, have you anything to add to that report?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. I'll open it up to board members. Comments, questions? Don't see anyone wishing to come in. I'll open it up to observers. Laura?
Just a couple of points. One under equality outcome 1. I think we're all aware we're quite far off achieving some of those in terms of publicity, timely timetables, that kind of thing. It's a recurring issue at the moment. And just as a general point, there's not a lot of mention of disability in terms of accessibility and equalities on this. It's mentioned, but it feels like it's not a core element of the outcomes. So just to flag that also is an increasing issue.
Thanks, Laura. Kirsty?
Yeah, thanks, Laura, for your comments there. Yes, so these have been consulted on with or engaged with, the Equality and Diversity Working Group, where they were given the opportunity to provide any comment or highlight anything that they thought was missing. But certainly these are draft outcomes at the moment, so we could certainly, review them, take a look at them, and also throughout the reporting cycle we do review them and provide an update report to the board in terms of, what we're doing to work towards that, which would include people within the protected characteristic groups with disabilities as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No more comments, questions? Okay, members, we'll just move to the recommendations, which members of the board are asked to, 1, note SWestrans duties under the Equalities Act 2010 and the Equality Act 2012 (Scotland) specific duties regulations. And 2 is to note that the SWestrans Equalities Mainstreaming Report 2025 at Appendix 1, and 3 to review and agree the draft SWestrans Equality Outcomes for 2025 to 2029 at Appendix 2, and taking on board the comments from the board, or from observers. Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 12, which is Sustainable Travel, Reducing Car Kilometres Audit Report, Audit Scotland Report. Grant, this is your report. Have you anything to add?
Nothing further to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Open it up to board members, comments, questions. Nobody wishing to come in? I'll open it up to observers. Laura?
I mean, really just a comment to say it's good to see it acknowledged how far off the government is in general in actually hitting that car kilometre reduction target. And I think it's helpful that the report is quite frank about the challenges with that. So from a bus user perspective, we think buses is a big answer to that problem, but that is going to mean serious investment and seriously rethinking the priorities in terms of how the government is spending its money. So yeah, welcome seeing the report and the clarity of its conclusions.
Thank you. I think I've raised this with the lead officer before, that there's a wee bit of confusion when it comes to car kilometres, because I think Transport Scotland's report actually mentions car reduction or car use reduction. So I don't know if you've got anything that you could maybe update us on that, Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And as you say, we've had a couple of conversations about this recently, and I mean, I echo your thoughts, which I revisited the discussion of the RTP chairs meetings at the end of last year in terms of some of their reflections as well. And I think the point is that the terms car use and reduction in car kilometres are kind of used interchangeably, and certainly some criticism that's been directed towards Transport Scotland in terms of the development of their route map, which they developed in the autumn of last year and drafted up. It presented much more of a framework in terms of the kind of general reduction in car use, and a reduction in car use is very different to a reduction in car kilometres, and the kind of measures and approach that you take to try and reduce car kilometres is very different, obviously, in terms of those longer term trips, particularly in rural parts of Scotland, which are going to be much more challenging and for which there are fewer alternatives to the private car. So I think that's really central to the sort of process of rethinking which is going on both within Transport Scotland, for which I think we're collectively waiting for a response from them on, but also in terms of the degree of challenge that they've faced, obviously from Audit Scotland in terms of this report, but also with COSLA and other organisations in which we're feeding in terms of really just ensuring that whilst that level of ambition is welcomed, it's added to with a dose of realism, and that the aspiration and ambition is matched with the actual actions and degree to which they believe that target is realistic in terms of the resource that's allocated to it and the kind of policy landscape that exists around it. And I think the Audit Scotland report has clearly kind of called that out and that inconsistency that exists.
Thank you for that update. Councillor Walters.
Thanks very much for that, Simon. Can you just clarify then what you think the opposing, what do you think the differences are between the focus on car use or the reduction of car use and the reduction of car kilometres, and why that seems to be an issue that's been discussed at a sort of a wider level? Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, happy to clarify. So the target is for a 20% reduction in car kilometres by 2030. But in terms of the discussion that's been had around it, and a criticism, I think it's fair to say, that's been pointed towards Transport Scotland, particularly in relation to the roadmap that they've developed, and the kind of language that's used in terms of their updates in the report, is that they've spoken about reduction in car use. So I think everyone not everyone, but many people are certainly in agreement with the reduction in both car use and car kilometres. But the important point is to clarify is that there is a difference. You can reduce car use through a variety of measures, particularly in less rural, more urban areas of Scotland, where you can encourage people to leave their private car at home, take alternative, more sustainable forms of travel, to walk, cycle, wheel, take the bus and so on. But that doesn't necessarily then make the impact that Transport Scotland would wish to see in terms of the target that they've set in relation to reduction in car kilometres. Or rather, you can reduce a significant number of short car trips in more urban areas, but you're still left with the problem of longer distance trips that are made across Scotland and within individual regions within Scotland, such as our own, which are in more rural areas, for which there's very little in terms of the demand management side, and there's very little in terms of the supply side, in terms of alternatives to the car. And it's the point that's been made is that it's those trips which really account for a significant proportion of car kilometres and car kilometres across Scotland. And so it's that differentiation which I think is being requested of Transport Scotland to be drawn out more clearly, particularly in terms of their roadmap and the action that they take to achieve the target for car kilometre reduction, not car use reduction. I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, that's really helpful actually, because when I looked at the key messages for that report, they do seem to use the kilometre reduction and the car use sort of in the same sort of way, and it doesn't really seem to take into account the sort of rurality of our region. So yeah, thanks very much for that, Sam.
Thank you, Keith. Don't see anyone else coming in, so we'll just move to the recommendations. So members of the board are asked to note the Audit Scotland report on sustainable travel and await further updates on the implementation of the report's recommendations. And 2, agree to work towards the target of 20% reduction of car kilometres by 2030 through the implementation of the RTS priority 9.1, and to update the board in future on actions and progress. Now, we're happy to note and agree. Yep, nods in the room. Thank you very much. Agenda item 13, any other business deemed urgent by the Chair due to the need for a decision. I've not been advised of any other business requiring a decision, but there are a couple of exempt items. So item 14 is the exclusion of the press, members of the public and observers. It is recommended that members of the board agree to consider the following items of business in private and exclude the press, members of the public and observers from the meeting, given the report contains confidential or exempt information in respect of paragraphs 6 and 9, brackets item 15, and paragraphs 6, 8 and 9, brackets item 16 of Schedule 7A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. We're happy to agree that. Yep, nods in the room. Thank you. So I'll just take a couple of minutes maybe for members that's online to move over to the other Teams meeting. I'd just like to thank observers and anybody else from the public for their attendance today. Thank you.